this debris.
Ever since we moved to our off-grid property here in southern Arizona, we've wondered what a really good rainfall would look like. At first it started as a light rain, but quickly escalated into a heavy rain with light hail. It hadn't been raining for long before we started to see water running across the width of our parking lot. After about 40 minutes, the rain started to ease up and we went outside to take a look around. It was still raining lightly and water was flowing in every direction all over the property. As you can see here, the water is flowing away from our house. When we originally built the foundation, we elevated it a few feet so that we had a nice slope away from the house on all sides. This is the low side here and it worked fine, but the other side is even more elevated. The first thing that we wanted to do is to check out our shipping container shop.
The way too, it's just we have so much that it can't go fast enough.
It turned out a little worse than we'd expected. There's quite a bit of water flowing underneath the shipping container, and since the shipping container is supported by blocks, I was worried that the water flowing underneath would undermine those blocks.
We need to re-level it a bit.
Well, it was a bit worrisome, but there was nothing we could do about it until the water receded, so we went to check on our kids' houses. Where their houses are built, the land is a little bit more sloped, and so the water was running away nicely. There was no issues with their homes. From there, we decided to walk over and check out how the wash was running on Kyle's side of the property. At times, it felt like we were wading through a swamp, which is really strange for Arizona. The wash was much higher than we've ever seen it. Next, we looped back to our property and were surprised to see that the water levels were even higher as water flowed in from the surrounding countryside. We went back over to the shop to check on the river that was flowing under one of our shipping containers, and it was still flowing really well. If anything, the water level had risen, and so even after walking around for 20 to 30 minutes, the water is still flowing out of there very nicely. I was glad to see that there weren't any signs of shifting or settlement of the shipping container. This little river that we're looking at here is actually our driveway as it comes around the shop. We had previously put sandbags in the front of this shipping container to keep water from going underneath, and that has worked, but this water is much higher than we ever expected to see. The water level is at least 5 inches deep here, well above the bottom of the doors to the shop, and right now the water is escaping mostly underneath this one shipping container over here. Otherwise, it's going around the entire shop and garden. As you can see, all the mulch from our parking area is being washed away, but surprisingly, this aircrete wall is keeping the garden protected. It's not being flooded or washed away. All the water is hitting the shop and the garden and having to go around or underneath. And so in the future, we're going to need to add some sandbags and provide some trenching to allow the water a path to go around. This is so strange to see. This entire area is normally a parking and turnaround area, and now it's just an expanse of water. It looks like a lake with flowing water as far as the eye can see. We're now heading down our main road, which looks like a river, and we're going to go check out the main wash as it enters our property. This area of the wash is unrecognizable. This is a raging river. This area is normally 2 narrow channels, and now both of those channels are submerged. The water level is well above them and is creating new channels. And as we walked down the wash, we could see that the level was just continuing to rise. The width of the water flow is really impressive. The sheer amount of volume is just staggering. We've walked down this wash many times, and it's a deep wash, and we've tried to imagine the amount of water that it must have taken to carve such a deep wash out here, and now we're seeing it in action. The deepest part of the wash is submersed, and it's way up on the banks and just flowing like a raging river. It's now been a few hours since the rain stopped, and the water level is finally starting to recede.
The few T-posts that are still standing are almost completely buried in sand.
And here's a look at our pond. Amazingly, the outlet where the pond overflows into the swell never failed, and so the water level in the pond was able to stay high, but the pond and the swell are full and overflowing.
In the desert, water doesn't stick around for very long. Within a couple of hours, most of the water had already soaked in or drained off, leaving behind a lot of sand and debris. Coming up is some footage of the aftermath and cleanup. Fortunately, the water did not wash the soil out from under the bricks. Caliche is often called nature's concrete.
Well, I already got the one from the other side.
Good.
Nice.
So here's some of the work we did to keep it from flooding under the shipping container. We dug some trenches going across there. There's also a trench over here to lead all the water away from the shipping container. And these big rains should be pretty rare. This is by far the biggest rain we've had, with getting 3 inches in about 45 minutes. So everything fared pretty well considering. But got this all fixed. Shouldn't have any more issues with water getting up under the shipping container. And then the shop itself is sealed pretty well, so not much water made it in even through the doors. But if we can get the water to drain away from the shipping container, we shouldn't have too much issue there. We have various ways to tell if the shipping container is moving. The gate here is attached to the shipping container, so if this gets out of whack, we can tell that things are moving. We also have some anchors with some bolts going through that also give us some clues. If the shipping container starts moving, then that just means we need to do some leveling. The soil around here has a whole lot of caliche, so this was a really good spot to put this structure. It has worked out really well. There's some parts of the property that have a lot of sand, but fortunately this area is on really solid, hard caliche. Earlier in the year, I had dug a lot of trenches to direct rainwater around some of the trees and shrubs on the property, and now a lot of these are filled in with sand, so we have some work to do to get this all cleaned up and shoveled out. Here's what this area looks like now in mid-August. Everything is so green and lush. And here's a look at the pond in mid-August. This area is just beautiful. Now we will be going back to show you some of the footage we got of some of the other exciting weather events we've had this year. This is a storm we had a couple of weeks earlier in mid-July. We got about 1/2 inch in a very short amount of time, so everything got a good watering.
Yeah, that upper bank must be some good hard stuff it's holding.
After checking out the pond, we decided to go see if the wash was running, and it was. But it wasn't doing anything too exciting yet. Then we went back to the pond to make sure that the outlet hadn't washed out, and it was filled almost completely to the brim. We started hearing something coming from the wash, so we decided to go check it out.
Whoa, look at all this debris. Oh man, there's another big chunk of like fence post.
Ooh.
We may take our fences out to check them. She's just having fun.
Ooh, oh, it's getting bigger.
This is wild.
Now we're checking to see if our fence was still up. Most of it was still standing.
Yeah, this is not slow. It is still cranking.
We checked other parts of the wash. Here it's flowing well over the bank. The water had started to slow now, and we discovered that our grown kids had decided to go for a swim.
It's gone all the way down to the rock where my foot is.
A few of the T-posts had washed out, but we were easily able to find them. A new channel had been cut, and a lot of debris was deposited here. The next storm, which we showed you at the beginning of this video, deposited tons of sand and it rerouted the wash. It also washed all of the debris away, as well as a couple of trees. Here's what this area looks like now in mid-August. We are continuing to go backwards with our video footage. So this was one of our earliest monsoon storms. We were excited to get about 1/2 inch. It was a really good watering for the desert. The rainwater from this side of the shipping container waters several trees. Our fruit trees get all of the runoff water from the roof of our house. We got water in the pond. It filled the pond pretty full. And here you can see a lot of the water coming down the road. This is how our pond fills. It just comes down the road and then goes down a trench that leads directly over to the pond. After this storm, we also had a little bit of water running down the wash. You can see here what the wash looked like at the beginning of the monsoon season. It was enough rain to bring out the Sonoran desert toads. April, May, and June were really dry with almost no rain. Here's a crazy dust devil we caught on film. Here's a little bit of footage I got in the winter. We got about 2.5 inches of rain. That's including January, February, and March. We have had some very dry winters since we've been here, so every little bit of moisture is welcome. We even got a little bit of water in the pond a couple of times. Many of our trees are also getting watered every time it rains. They are getting all of the runoff water from our roofs. And we do occasionally get snow in the desert. Here we got about 1 inch, covered everything nicely. It doesn't usually stick around for too long because our daytime temperatures usually warm up into at least the 50s. We do get pretty cold nights out here. We're down below freezing pretty much every night in the winter, and we occasionally get down into the single digits. The weather here in the desert can be pretty extreme, but it sure keeps things interesting. So we've had about 5.5 inches of rain so far this monsoon season. So hopefully we'll be getting more. That brings our total to 8 inches so far this year, which is about average. Thanks so much for watching.